need to be told, and they are guided by the compass of their conscience.
From India for the world, the India Story, the show for the global citizen.
Hello and welcome to WION World is One. You're with me, Katie Pilbeam, broadcasting live from London this hour. Let's get straight to the headlines. The first 50 asylum seekers to be moved to the Bibi Stockholm barge in Portland later on today, according to reports. Up to 500 men aged between 18 and 65 will be housed on the barge while they await the outcome of their asylum application. A new report reveals that UK MPs have been paid over $12 million from second jobs and freelance work over the past year, largely driven by the size of Boris Johnson's earnings, as well as former Tory ministers taking up a slew of highly paid jobs. Philippines summons Beijing's envoy after the China Coast Guard blocked and water-cannoned Philippine vessels in the disputed South China Sea. Manila says it will never abandon Philippine-held shoal in South China Sea. Greta Gerwig's directorial Barbie has surpassed the $1 billion mark at the global box office. Well, this makes Gerwig the first ever solo female filmmaker with a $1 billion film. Lionel Messi just can't stop scoring for Inter Miami. The 7-time World Player of the Year nets another brace, including an injury time free kick to help his side beat FC Dallas in the League's Cup.
Sensational from Lionel Messi. 4-4. Time. World Cup. Robert Taylor.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu may seek China's help to normalise ties with Saudi Arabia. Now, this after China brokered a landmark peace deal between the kingdom and Iran, when Netanyahu is expected to visit China in October. Well, earlier, the Chinese President Xi Jinping also repeated China's offer to mediate the Palestine-Israel conflict. Analysts predict the trip may come as a message to the United States at a time when US efforts to normalize relations between Saudi and Israel are in the works and is yet to show a clear progress so far. Now, however, many West Asian countries have normalized their ties with Israel. The list includes the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. But no clear progress has been seen after rounds of separate talks with Saudi Arabia. Now, some political analysts also claim that the task may not come as easy for China. The most prominent one will be the escalating tensions with Palestinians. Well, Saudi Arabia will at least ask for a halt to the building of settlements in the Palestinian territories. Well, if we go back here, so since 2013, China has offered a few peace proposals. It even called for an organised discussion for a two-state solution, three-way dialogues and coordinated international efforts to resolve the conflict. Well, Netanyahu's visit would be closely watched in the context of the US-China diplomatic tussle. Now, however, Israel has made it clear that it has no intention of replacing China with the US. As after announcing his China trip, the Israeli Prime Minister assured the US is still Israel's irreplaceable ally. Well, apart from diplomatic issues, Netanyahu's visit may also focus on high-tech investment in Israel. Well, such Chinese investments peaked in 2018 before dropping, and increased scrutiny from the US came into the equation. Now, last year, Israel tightened its foreign investment rules on the grounds of national security. This was in response to US pressure to limit Chinese investment in sensitive sectors. Jodie Cohen is joining us now live from Ramallah, joining us. What are the chances of success, do you think, of a Beijing-brokered Saudi-Israel normalization deal?
Hi, Katie. Well, I spoke with Israel's ambassador in Delhi a few days ago, who said that Israel would always welcome peace. And we know, as you said, that Prime Minister Netanyahu is set to visit China in October. Now, Israel-Saudi relations are likely to be on the agenda. And also China's offered to mediate between Israel and the Palestinians. So that's also likely to be discussed as well. But Chinese media are reporting that Beijing's role as a mediator could be challenging because of its lack of leverage over the parties. And we know that Israel-Saudi relations are said to exist behind closed doors. They're not out in the open, and they're not as extensive as they could be. The US broker talks are already happening. President Biden had said that a rapprochement may be underway. And in May, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had said that normalization is a US national security interest. And in July, he visited Saudi Arabia while US normalization envoy Dan Shapiro was in Israel. So I think there are three factors in terms of success. Number one, Chinese support for normalization is likely to be welcomed by Israel and Saudi Arabia. Number two, it could equally be seen as being designed to put pressure on the US to bring more to the negotiation table. And C, I think it's also really important to remember that normalization is still seen as a long shot. There are many factors at play, and lining up all the national interests won't be easy.
And is this more about sending a message maybe to the United States and about Beijing realistically brokering this deal, do you think?
So this report follows the Chinese brokered Iran-Saudi rapprochement. And China, we know, would like to be stronger in West Asia. We also know that the US would like greater distance between Saudi Arabia and China, and also Iran. So this could be a single signal to the US. We know that President Biden has been trying to broker Saudi-Israel normalization. President Biden is also thought to want a foreign policy win before the US presidential election. And this news could put pressure on the US to speed up normalization potentially. From the Saudi perspective, as well as support for the Palestinians, they would like US support for a Saudi civilian nuclear energy program, and also a US support for a NATO-like security alliance, and also to buy the third anti-ballistic missile defense system from the US. Now, in Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that normalization with Saudi Arabia is one of his top priorities. But Israel does see the United States as its closest ally, and it's unlikely to want to upset this relationship. It's likely that Israel is still hoping for a US brokered deal.
Okay, Jodie Cohen, thank you so very much indeed. Our correspondent there joining us live from Ramallah here on WION World as well.
Thank you.
Well, let's move on to Niger now, because the country is on a knife edge. Well, the country, which is in the midst of a coup right now, may be staring down at the barrel of a military intervention by a coalition of its neighbouring nations. Well, this after the coup leaders rejected the demand of the Economic Community of West African States to reinstate Niger's ousted president. Now, the deadline set by the defence chiefs of ECOWAS ended on Sunday. Now, thereafter, Niger closed its airspace to all flights until further notice, citing the threat of a potential military intervention. Now, ECOWAS has also not responded as to what its next steps would be even. Now, that deadline has expired.
Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighbouring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today, Sunday, August 6th, 2023, for all airports until further notice. Any attempt to violate the national airspace will be met with an energetic and instantaneous response.
Well, meanwhile, on Sunday, thousands of citizens who supported the coup leaders flocked to a stadium in the capital, Niamey. Now, the stadium, which has a capacity of 30,000 people, was packed with supporters. They also unfurled and waved Russian flags. Well, the streets of Niamey were also packed with supporters of the junta as well. Multiple nations are pulling their troops from Niger in the wake of the coup. US and Italian forces evacuated the African nation and landed in Rome on Sunday. Well, according to the Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto, 75 soldiers were evacuated. However, 250 Italian troops deployed for counter-insurgency and military training missions remain in the country. Now, this is the 7th coup Niger is witnessing in the last 3 years. The country is key to Western powers since it has helped them in the fight against Islamist insurgencies in West Africa's Sahel region. But now the junta, after overthrowing the democratically elected government, is determined to stay in power, stating they will not cave in to external pressure to stand down. Okay, let's head to the UK now, where the government there is expected to house asylum seekers on the Bibi Stockholm barge as soon as today. Now, the developments come as the Tory-led government announced further measures to tackle illegal migration. Now, according to media reports, about 50 people are expected to be in the first group of migrants to be housed on the barge. The vessel is docked at Portland in Dorset. The locals are still opposing the plan, though. Now, earlier, Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick said the barge will accept occupants in the coming days. Earlier, the Fire Brigades Union raised concerns over the design of the vessel. They said the government's plan to house around 500 people may not be a suitable idea. Now, according to them, the vessel can house only around 200 people. Now, the UK government has commenced their Small Boats Week. The Rishi Sunak-led government came up with a series of announcements. They've increased the fines for employers and landlords who will allow the illegal migrants on their properties. No penalties for employers who will be increased up to a maximum of $57,000 per week. Now, similarly, landlords may face fines up to $12,000. Now, meanwhile, the Labour Party has also announced that they have no choice but to continue housing asylum seekers on barges if they win the election. However, they blamed the mess on the Conservatives. Now, the Bibi Stockholm is a 222-bedroom and a 3-storey accommodation vessel. Now, it was towed in UK waters after it was taken over by the Home Office and moved from Italy. Now, described by the Home Office as basic. The 1970s built Bibi Stockholm will offer asylum seekers healthcare provisions, catering, and 24/7 security. The Home Office has announced they had leased the Bibi Stockholm in April. Now, on the other hand of this, the complete Sunak's pledge to curb illegal migration, he needs to reports suggest UK government may use tents to house around 200 migrants. So tents might be involved in all of this as well. Okay, so in recent days, the UK Home Office bought tents to house these migrants. Now, this comes after the plans brought by the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Now, last year, the UK government came up with a similar plan to house migrants.
And family, and particularly her mother, Stacey.
Okay, so Alex Isaac is joining us right now, our London correspondent. So it seems like the government's plans and indeed their ambitions and dreams in Suella Braverman's case, it seems like one of them is coming to fruition with this barge.
Well, they keep trying to push more and more to try and get illegal migrants somewhere in the meantime so that they can process them. And this barge is just one of those options. Talking about the tents and potentially housing them in old armed forces barracks as well. That's something that's still going through. But they're having a lot of fight back from locals, from councils who don't want this huge influx of illegal migratory people coming over and causing real havoc in the area. Now, let's not forget the Bibi Stockholm barge itself. It will house 500 people. It actually has already gone through all of the checks to say that it is safe for that amount of people. Of course, it doesn't seem quite right coming over and being stuck in a place that potentially doesn't have enough bedrooms itself, but they have had all those checks go through. But there isn't much of an alternative. Right now, the people in the UK themselves, they're struggling, and there are people that are homeless who also don't have housing, who are living in one-bedroom apartments for 4 or 5 people. So this is a real election getter. That's why Labour has no doubt come out and said that they'll also look to use potential barges and house asylum seekers in certain ways as well. But really, it comes down to these boat crossings, these illegal boat crossings, because we are talking about those that come over illegally, not people who are trying to seek safe asylum. They're also struggling, and that is also a huge backlog. But those that are coming on boats are not necessarily coming because they're looking for that safe asylum. They're looking for a better life. They want more money, and they're coming by nefarious means. They are giving money to people smugglers. And we understand that there are a lot of information on social media platforms saying how to get over here in the best way and how to make sure you get the best benefits. Earlier today, we heard from the government as well that we're going to stop giving asylum seekers those luxury hotels. There was a protest not that long ago at Mayfair, one of those luxury hotels. They said it wasn't good enough, but actually that's one of the reasons so-called claimed on social media to come over, to get the luxury, to get the money and to get the benefits. The UK is sadly seen as a soft hit, and it does feel like even though we're trying to make these moves, if people come here, it's actually stopping them coming here in the first place. And even though we have this migration bill, it's still not stopping people coming over, and that's where every component needs to lie, not necessarily just the government at the moment.
Okay, Alex Isaac, thank you so much indeed. As you say, it's designed to be a deterrent for those people, as you describe, coming over in nefarious means here. Alex Isaac, our London reporter, thank you. Okay, moving on here, because the secondary income of UK MPs is up for debates. It's come under the radar once again because a media analysis claims that MPs have been paid more than $12 million from second jobs, and the large proportion of this is still driven by former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Tory ministers. Now, even after a public outrage around these second jobs, Guardian analysis has found that MPs earning work from outside Parliament has continued to rise. Now, according to this analysis, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, his earnings stand somewhere near $6.1 million, and about 90 other Conservatives, well, they constituted around $6 million. Meanwhile, the combined outside income of Labour, SNP and Lib Dem MPs also stood at around $500,000. Now, the sources of these incomes, they range from fees from giving speeches to working from lucrative consultancies as well. And sometimes this also includes well-paid media gigs. And some Tory MPs, they quit their second job shortly after Johnson said he was looking at limiting outside income. Now, meanwhile, the highest Labour earner over the last year was David Lammy, the shadow foreign secretary. According to reports, he made more than $100,000 from presenting LBC Radio. Now, rights groups and critics, they're calling for strict rules on second jobs as MPs. Last year, the UK government dropped plans to cap MPs' income from these second jobs. Now, Labour's former Justice Secretary Richard Burgon urged the government to accept his proposed bill. This bill bans MPs from having second jobs altogether.
See what happens. Lying through his teeth. It's quite obvious. It is not the Prime Minister, so we don't need to...
We'll establish the facts.
Okay, let's stay with the UK for now, but we're going to bring you the latest on the update on the jobs market, the UK jobs market, because this is as employers, they reduce the number of new permanent staff hires amid growing concerns about the economic outlook. Now, signs of hiring slowing down have emerged, indicating tougher times for job seekers across the country. So the gauge of permanent staff hiring measures the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, and KPMG has plummeted to its lowest level since June 2020 during the COVID-19 lockdown. Now, the economic outlook uncertainty is raising concerns, making the job market tougher for eager job seekers. Now, as the job market experiences a slowdown in permanent placements, the survey also reveals a striking trend, the weakest growth in temporary staff hiring in 9 months. So workers are now seeking more stability, gravitating towards permanent roles, further contributing to this shift in hiring dynamics right now. Now, despite the challenges, many analysts remain optimistic, describing the jobs market as fairly robust. Now, on the pay front, starting salaries for new permanent staff have surged, surpassing pre-pandemic standards. However, the rate of wage growth has hit its lowest point since April 2021, signalling cautiousness among employers. Now, skilled workers remain in high demand, and competition for their talents, combined with the cost of living pressures, is keeping starting salaries actually at their peak. Now, this job market trend, it aligns with the recent interest rate hike by the Bank of England, which has been keeping a watchful eye on the rising wage growth. Okay, let's get to some football now, because it's beginning to start all over again. So last season's runners-up, Arsenal, well, they received a psychological boost before kick-starting their Premier League campaign. The Gunners beat Manchester City 4-1 on penalties to win the Community Shield, while the treble winners meant business right from the word go. But they had to wait until the 77th minute to open the scoring. Now, Arsenal defender Kieran Tierney failed to clear a ball as Kevin De Bruyne headed it towards the second half substitute Cole Palmer. And Palmer then